even though I wasn't hitting the mark of being perfect, I was judging myself for not hitting it, even though it's not even attainable. And once I replaced it with excellence, I was giving myself grace. Like, hey, that's not even a thing, so we don't have to judge ourselves against this imaginary perfectionistic standard that you're never going to hit anyway. And once I stopped judging myself and gave myself grace, I started giving my family grace instead of judgment. I stopped judging other people too. And I stopped taking their judgment of me as judgment.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kate Champion, your host, and I am so excited to share this conversation with you today. Let me ask you something. Are you or a loved one an organizational nightmare? If so, you are absolutely in the right place. Today's guest is Lisa Woodruff, founder and CEO of Organize 365. She is truly the queen of organization. This is a fun, fast-paced, and incredibly practical conversation. Lisa helps us tackle paper piles that seem to multiply overnight, the what, the why, and the how of organizing medical records, especially important if you are a caregiver, and how to navigate all the things for tax time, which here in the US is right around the corner. Lisa also shares so many smart strategies, helpful frameworks, and real-life tools. There is truly something here for everyone. And yes, we have a lot of fun along the way. Before we dive in, please make sure that you are signed up for the Reflections and Intentions newsletter. This is the best way to stay connected. You'll receive tips for flourishing and thriving, special announcements, and new episodes delivered straight into your inbox. Head over to livingbigmindfully.com, and while you're there, download your free Aging Better Toolkit. That is my gift to you. This podcast and all of my work is rooted in one mission: to help you live a longer, stronger, more intentional life. So remember, your time, your energy, and your health are your most valuable resources. So please protect them, honor them, and use them wisely. Okay, my friends, that is enough for me. Here's Lisa.
Good morning, Lisa. Hi, and welcome to the show. How are you today?
Kate, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Good, good. So I'd like to start with just taking a breath, and getting grounded, settle in. I think, as women and men too, we're probably so busy, so much going on. Sometimes it's just important to stop and pause for a second. So welcome. And I am excited about connecting today because we probably really need you. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got to do what you're doing.
Okay, so I know we're going to talk about paper in this podcast. So I'm going to tell my story, kind of like how I came to be a paper organizing expert. So when I was a kid, I did scrapbooking and my mom did paper crafts. So there was always a lot of like crafty type paper to organize. And I loved personal planners, and I would comb through catalogs and cut out little things and paste them and make what I thought my future home would look like, and, make little notebooks about what I wanted to do in my future home. And I've always been a very paper pencil person. When I was in high school, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And so like vowels in words just kind of swim around. They have no meaning to me whatsoever. And I find if I write things, I could remember things for tests. And I have a photographic memory. So I would go up to the teacher in the middle of high school, and I would say, okay, I don't know the answer to this question, but it's on page 42, line 2, and it's the third word. And she goes, that doesn't count. You actually have to know what the word is. But like I had that kind of a photographic memory. So I knew that if I would write things down, I would remember things. I would write things on note cards to quiz myself, but I would remember my handwriting of writing things down. So I would remember what was on the back based on what I wrote. So it was really kind of weird in this whole paper thing. So then I went to college, I got a teaching degree, and then I was a stay-at-home mom. I was in direct sales. And when I was in direct sales, I realized that people who were in direct sales were not very organized. They were passionate about the product they sold. They weren't really profitable. And in my 30s, I organized my own team and then even competitors' teams by organizing the leader's home office. I would go in and I would organize their home office. And I started to have everybody's home office look the same. Like, here's where your invoices are. Here's where your expenses going to be. Here's how you're going to organize your things for tax returns. Because most people in direct sales, they wait until April. And April is when they find out if they were profitable the last year, because they're not keeping track at all of their profit and loss. And newsflash, most people in direct sales are not profitable because they spend too much money on the products and they don't really focus on the business part and being profitable. So I've always kind of had this way of organizing papers. When I was a teacher, before I had kids, I would go in other teachers' classrooms and I would organize their teacher closet. I would organize all their paper piles, like these are papers to grade, these are papers, whatever. Well, when I started my company, when I turned 40, when I started Organize 365 and I started going in home and organizing people's homes, obviously I organized, kids' clothes and kids' toys and the woman's closet. But what I realized was there was a lot of paper. And I put in place file cabinet organization solutions that were on the market, but none of them worked for my clients nor for myself. The one good thing was no one could figure out file cabinets. So then I had retainer clients and I would go 3 or 4 times a year and I would file all their stuff. And then when they needed stuff, they would literally call me and say, what file is this in? And I would tell them because I knew, but they didn't know. And I was like, oh my gosh, this whole thing is not working for anybody. And there's a lot of paper in households. And this was, 2012, 2013, 2014. I kept saying, there's so much paper. And everyone kept saying, we're going paperless. And I was like, no, we're not. We are not. Because we have social security cards and we have birth certificates and you're going to have to, settle your parents' and grandparents' estate. And let me just tell you, some of them don't even have computers, let alone the amount of paper that is coming. And I kind of just started to organize paper and coming up with solutions for how to organize paper and became known as the paper solution expert.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm just trying to picture kind of inside your head. I just don't have a brain that works like that. It's like, I cannot imagine. It feels like this massive AI model in your brain. I can't imagine that level of organization and kind of structure. It feels like a lot of structure. It feels kind of incredible. Does it feel like that in your head?
Well, I'm a jigsaw puzzler. I love jigsaw puzzles. And I do like 3,000 and 5,000 piece jigsaw puzzles now because I've done them since I was a little kid. So I love lots of little pieces, but I like lots of little pieces that are going towards a big picture because I'm a big picture person. And so what I ultimately realized with paper was there are only really 4 kinds of paper, 5 if you include kids. Okay, 5 kinds of paper. And once you know what the kinds of paper are, then it's easy to find solutions. But if you're trying to do a file cabinet for 5 kinds of paper, well, there are only 5 files. So you get very lost in the how micro do we need to organize versus macro. And did I put that insurance thing in the insurance folder or did I put it in the car folder? Or did I put it in the kids folder or our folder? Because we have 4 cars. And it was that kind of thing that was catching people up, like where you put it, not necessarily what kind of paper you have. And I was a kindergarten teacher. So I make it kindergarten simple. They're just these 5 kinds of paper. And then whichever kind it is goes in the binder, which binders are easy to use if you have to escape with a hurricane or a forest fire or whatever. Or you need to take it to the doctor or the lawyer. You can be portable with your paper. And just if paper doesn't fit in one of these binders, do you really need it then is the question.
Okay. All right. So now I'm really curious. Tell me, what are the 5 kinds of paper? I'm just what are they? Give it to us.
Okay. Number 1 is financial. Like if you have nothing, you definitely need a financial binder. Your financial binder is going to have, 401k statements, insurance, birth certificate, all of that kind of stuff. It is the binder that you need if you're going to be power of attorney for someone or settle someone's estate. About 50% of what you need for that binder is in your file cabinet. The other 50% is usually on a computer, and you need to know the passwords in order to get it. Second is a medical binder. You very rarely have paperwork for medical stuff. But if you have any kind of a medical condition, it's really important to start creating a medical binder because we have a lot of stories of clients that once they had physically printed out items that they could give to their doctors, they got better results and faster results. 90% of what goes in a medical binder is actually in your head because you are the best detective for yourself or your family member who is ill and writing down all of those notes and making good, diaries of what's going on. Then there's the household reference binder. This is for anyone that owns the home that they have. If you rent, you get to skip this one. So this is all the home improvements, manuals, infrequently used tasks that you write down, like how do we reset the whole security system and the fire detector when we have to change the batteries, that kind of stuff. Household operations is kind of like your lesson plan book for your family. This one's fun. It's holidays and pets and cleaning and travel and all of that kind of information. And then the fifth one would be kids. So if you have kids, you might have a binder for all their artwork, and then you might have a binder for their school-related needs. Mine's called a Warrior Mama binder, and it helps you with any of their educational or medical extra needs they might have for an IEP.
Wow, that's incredible. So as you're talking, two things are coming up. First of all, I did listen to a couple of your podcasts, and we can give it a shout out at the end. And you talked about, and it really resonated with me, that you had a story about how important it is to keep the lab work, right? That year-to-year lab work. And you mentioned a story about kind of cholesterol levels and how helpful that was to be able to go back several years and provide that information. Would you mind sharing that? So again,
Sure. Yeah, sure. So just so you know, your medical records are not permanently somewhere. They're legally, they only need to be kept for 5 to 7 years. And even then, they may not be kept. So if you want to know your lab results, print out a copy, is all I have to say. So I'm past menopause now. I'm 54, and I went to a new OBGYN. I never did get pregnant, so I don't have an OBGYN. I just use my regular practitioner. And then going through menopause, it was suggested, like, maybe go to an OBGYN. I'm like, well, I'm not getting pregnant. Why would you go? They're like, oh, they do more than that. I was like, oh, okay. So I went to the new OBGYN, and of course, they ran like the full panel of everything. And she looked at my cholesterol number and she was like, we're going to have to talk about this next year when you come back. And I was like, all right. I mean, I'm not anti-pharmaceutical. I'm on migraine medicine, but if I don't need it, I don't need it. So luckily, I had all of my records. I got them from my doctor, who, by the way, doesn't have any of my records digitally, which is interesting. I guess he just pays a fee. So I had my medical records, which aren't much. I don't have a lot of medical issues. And I'd been having regular blood work done. And so I looked at before menopause, during menopause, after menopause, my cholesterol numbers stayed steady. They didn't go up. So while they're, not in the green, they're in the yellow, according to like current standards. Actually, fun fact, all the way back to when I started tracking my cholesterol, they were in the green. The standard has changed. My cholesterol didn't change, but the standard changed. So I went to my doctor the next year, the OBGYN. And I said, okay, so my cholesterol's in the yellow. I understand what you're saying, but it's always been in the yellow. Like, this didn't change because of menopause. This is my cholesterol baseline. And she said, oh, okay, you're fine. And I was like, okay, great. Had I not done that, I'd be on cholesterol medicine. Now, I'm not pro or anti-cholesterol medicine. Yeah. It's fine. If you need it, you need it. But I didn't feel physically like I needed it. And my numbers haven't changed over time. So nothing's different in my body that would warrant a change in my regimen.
So having access to those kind of yearly labs and the way that our bodies change over time was super helpful for you. Super helpful.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's tax time, at least here in the United States. We're getting up to that April 15th. And in my house, I'm going to talk for myself. I'm decently organized. Not great. It's decent. There's definitely areas for improvement. I'm going to throw my husband under the bus. He is an organizational nightmare. I'm telling you. So bad. He hasn't opened his mail for 10 years. His mail. I open my mail. I mean, we got stacks. He's got bags. He just puts it all in a plastic bag and he takes it somewhere. I don't know where he takes it. And then it comes to tax time. So, I've got my little box and I'm decent and he's just scrambling for the numbers, right, for the accountant. So give us some tips and strategies for me, to survive that. It's okay. We do it. Yeah. So, but for people in general, for tax time, right? What's the most effective way to organize and get our numbers to the accountant?
I'm so glad you mentioned the husband-wife dynamic. We have a similar one. My husband, when he did the bills back in the day, he would balance the checkbook to the penny. And it never balanced. So then we'd have all these conversations. I'm like, you're too much of a perfectionist. Give me this thing. So then for a long time, I'd be like, I lost $600. I gained $600. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, don't worry about it. It always usually comes on the wash. So I do the bills. I'm more accurate now. Actually, I don't balance the checkbook anymore. I just whatever the bank says. But I do the majority of the bill pay and all of that because we don't do it the same way. And we tried sitting down and doing it together. And you guys, it's like the fastest path to divorce court I've ever seen. I was like, no, you do it or I do it, but we don't do this together. Same with the mail. Like his mail, like will stack up over there. I'm like I open 99%, like these couple are yours. And like, he'll get to them eventually. I'm like, okay, you do you. I'm just going to keep going. So I just want to call out that there definitely is this difference. That's no big deal. Tax time. My big tip is to get so we use the Sunday basket, which is your weekly planning box. And that's how I do all my bill pay and all my projects and everything I have going on. January 1, I take my holiday box, which is a separate box, and I put it on the kitchen counter. It becomes my tax box. So every single piece of paper that comes in end of January and the beginning of February goes in this one box. Then I take that one box, open all the mail, and start to do the taxes. Now, for myself personally, I do my taxes, I do business taxes, and then we have adult children, young adult children, we do their taxes. I do about 5 or 6 tax returns, as in I prepare them for the tax preparer, although some I do on TurboTax. So all of that's in that one box, and I divide it by the person that I'm doing the taxes for. Some are simpler than others. And then I go hunting for the things that didn't get shipped, which is always the Procter and Gamble dividend thing for like 92 cents. And you got to go find that thing. Or the HSA, which is like a 1099 SA. For whatever reason, that one doesn't get mailed. And when you go into the portal to get it, you have to go to another portal. And like, then you're in like portal Hades.
Yeah.
Anyways, once I get all of that stuff and get it all organized, it's ready to go over to the accountant. So my biggest tip is to have one bag, box, whatever, that all the tax stuff stays in until you're done. Like don't leave it in a pile or a little here, a little there. Whenever you're sitting down, just grab that basket and do that basket. Second thing I would say is if you're writing anything off on your taxes for a business, which is a Schedule C in the United States, and I told you I did this for direct sales. Every year I did this, it was like a brand new surprise, what they called the categories. You guys, the categories don't change. There's a postage category, there's an internet category, there's a supplies, there's office supplies and regular supplies. Like the categories don't change. Finally, like 7 years in, I was like, maybe I should just start categorizing my expenses based on the IRS designation versus whatever harebrained idea. Like I had like a photo, I was a scrapbook consultant. I had a photo category. I had a demos category. These aren't in the IRS tax return. So I changed to the IRS tax return. So here at Organize 365, we have an income and expense package, and it gives you the IRS categories and you track them by month. And it's really easy to do your taxes from that. So separating out and starting to name your expenses the same way the IRS does. Because let me just tell you, I don't need to get the IRS checking anything that I'm doing over here. Like I'm scared to death when I don't know about you, but I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the final exam of the year. We have to send in our taxes. And I love the meme that says, you have to figure out your taxes and tell us how much you owe us. And I said, do you know? They're like, yeah, we know. Well, can you tell us? No, you have to guess. And I'm like, oh gosh, that's how I totally feel like I'm guessing correctly. I don't need to be audited.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. I mean, organize your write-offs according to the
Yes,
form. I totally
the final exam.
Yes.
Yeah, according to the final exam. And one more tip I want to tell you, because this is the other thing that holds me up. So because I file multiple tax returns for my adult children and everything. So if you use TurboTax and you're doing your own, you have a login for TurboTax. So I have all these different emails that are attributed to all these different people I'm filing for. Then you got the password. Then you always have to have people's driver's licenses. So I was like, get out your driver's license. Everybody's got to give me a driver's license. You have to have a PIN now. And the first time you file on TurboTax, you have to have last year's tax return because they're going to ask for a specific line from that to make sure that you're actually filing the right one. So I just have like a little cheat sheet. I have a little sheet and I write all this down. So when I go to file, I'm like, okay, when I do my sons, this is who I am. When I do my daughters, this is who I am. When I do my, and then as I get the tax return done, I have them come over and sign the tax return on TurboTax, and then I just submit it. So anything that you're like, I have to look this up, write it down, people. And this is why I love paper, Kate, because then in this tax box that I have in this little slash pocket, I have this piece of paper. So I just did this last week and I pulled out the paper. I was like, oh yeah, because which email is attributed to which kid, you don't remember. You're never going to remember. And it's a final exam. So give yourself a cheat sheet.
That's right. You got to get it right.
Yeah.
As you're talking, I'm thinking, my stress level around tax time definitely goes up a bit for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, wow, to be that organized and have that cheat sheet and have your little
Yes.
list, how I can take a breath. I don't, and my heart isn't beating out of my chest. It's like, oh my gosh, in some multi-universe, might be able to do something like that. That's
Yeah, and
incredible.
it happens every year until you die, and then actually there's a tax return due after you die. Like, this is not a final exam that's going away. It is worth the extra effort once you're all done to take 30 minutes to go, okay, what did I just do? What do I want to remember? So, like, I do my kids' tax returns, and I had itemized the medical for my son. Well, the automatic, like, it's like $15,000 now. You have to be over $15,000 in order to itemize versus just taking the standard deduction. I was like, well, shoot, I hope we don't have that much medical. So I'm not taking that. My daughter is a single mother. The daycare bill doesn't beat that threshold. So I don't even need to keep that paperwork anymore. So I write myself these notes. So when I sit down, I'm like, don't even bother itemizing. Just file the W-2 and see if you owe taxes. I'm like, his tax return was so easy this year. But last year I'd kept all of these receipts that I didn't even need. So it reminds me of where we are. And the tax code has just changed again. So figure out what the tax code is now, but it'll stay the same for a while. Some of these tax changes are permanent. I use permanent in air quotes because nothing with the government's ever permanent. But yeah.
Yeah.
Give
Yeah.
yourself a cheat sheet.
Yeah. So as you're talking about helping your children and family members, now I'm thinking about so many people, right, that are also they're helping their children, adult children, and they're also caring for elderly
Yep.
parents, right? So now you're in this kind of
Yeah.
sandwich, and often you're responsible for medical records for mom or dad, or
Mhm.
tax things, and maybe assisted living. So how do you coach somebody through, maybe somebody who is in that position and they are trying to care for elderly parents, power of
Yeah.
attorney, doctor's appointments, all the things.
Yeah. So let me address it a couple different ways. Let's talk about digital versus paper, what you keep digital and what you keep paper. And then kind of like who does what. So if you have multiple siblings, like when my father was sick, I took care of power of attorney and my sister took care of power of healthcare because she was local. Now with my husband's mother, we are local and her daughter is not local. And so we need to do more of the healthcare because we're the ones that are right there in the room, right? And my husband is the one that's power of healthcare. So sometimes you could divide up the work with siblings. And healthcare is very different than financial. And these are the main two things you need to do. I don't know much about assisted living or Medicaid, Medicare. I'm not there yet. I'm actually researching, but I'm not there yet. But for medical and financial, I'm much better with financial than medical. Here's the medical that I know. For the most part, you can get what you need through the apps if you have access to the app you need for your parents. So the MyChart or wherever they are, there's going to be an app and a way to get to the digital records. What I'm finding is the most important in the healthcare is to have access to the social worker and the nursing staff wherever the parent or grandparent is. And the social worker, I'm finding out, is the one that can unlock additional weeks of care or additional resources in the community, or just let you know what you don't know because you don't know. I'm always at the end of every meeting going, so what
Yeah.
didn't we ask? What don't we know?
I
And then
love
they'll
that
tell you
question.
these
I ask
things.
that
And I'm
all
like,
the
why didn't
time.
you lead with that? Lead with that, please.
That is the
Um,
best question. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I mean, so I look at medical two different ways. If you're caring for someone elderly who is going to live for years even, but they have a lot of medical diagnoses, I let the doctors do what they're going to do. I mean, if you're in your 90s and the doctors know what they're doing, I kind of let them do what they're going to do. Now, if you're caring for someone who's 23 and just been in an accident, I'm like, tell me every drug. Why are you doing it? Where's the research? What are we doing? Like, I have a different perspective on how aggressive I'm going to be about questioning what the doctor's doing. I mean, doctors have a lot more expertise than I do. But if it's going to be a lifelong condition and you're in your 20s or 30s and we're talking about different drugs, I'm going to research the drugs and figure out which one I think might work better with their DNA. And also I'm going to run a DNA test, which will tell you, especially if it's, and you should know this, if you're dealing with psychotic medications, anything that is neurological, there is a specific DNA test. I think it's $5,000, but usually insurance will cover it. And it will tell you which antipsychotic medications, depression, ADHD, bipolar, schizophrenia, all of those, all the drugs that are used for that, they will tell you which ones are most likely to work with your DNA. And this test actually matches your DNA characteristics to all the research that's already been done in the database, and it's continually updated. So, and then it also will tell you how it works if you're a smoker or not a smoker. So the same exact medications work differently if you're a smoker or not a smoker based on your DNA. And it just gives you a starting place. So when you're working with something neurological that's not like I broke an arm, there are a lot of medication options and they work different with different physiology. So I definitely, if it's a younger person, I would definitely run that. The thing I find that really in medical that you need is more continuity of care, understanding what's happening every day and watching behaviors. Sometimes you're dealing with your parents and your grandparents. You're really not looking at what their dosage of their medication is. I mean, you may, but it's more like, mom seems off today. Why does mom seem off today? And then you tell somebody else like, hey, mom seemed off today. When you go tomorrow, let me know what you see. And then you go the next day, oh, mom's back. Okay, must have just been something she ate. But then you're like, day 2, no, she's kind of off and she actually was grumpy and she's never grumpy. All right, great. Can you guys run a UTI check? Because urinary tract infections can go a long, long time before you notice it. And it's almost always behavioral first before people think to run the test. And it's a very easy thing to treat. And as people get older, it's like the number one thing. Just every time you go in and go, run a UTI check. Just run a UTI check. So I look at behavioral more than I do what a doctor would look at. And then being able to communicate, like, what did they have for breakfast? Were they fed? Did they get out today? How many days has it been since they've been outside? That kind of thing. You're looking at their overall well-being. And I just love a journal for that. Like I would set it up in people's homes all the time. We would have like a bulletin board and it would have the menu on there. People would check things off and you just write little notes in the notebook so that the caregiver could write notes. And then when the family came in and whoever is the power of healthcare, when they come in, they could just go back and look through the notes and be like, I'm noticing that mom is refusing milk every single day or whatever. You just start to see patterns. You're looking at patterns.
Oh, I love that. I love
So that's
that.
medical. Financial is a whole nother ball of worms. Okay, so financial. A couple things happen as people get older. Number one, what I observed in my clients, and this also happened with my father, is somewhere along the line, they stop opening the mail. Not like your husband, like they just don't want to. But they stop opening the mail for a couple of reasons. One, they stop opening the mail maybe because cognitively they just are falling down on processing it. But more often than not, I notice when people stop opening the mail, it's because they don't have the money to pay the bills and they just kind of like let it go. So if you're noticing that your parents have stopped opening the mail and they haven't told you about their finances because they don't tell you, then you're like, we got to find out about the finances because they just don't know what to do. And they don't know how to tell you. And so if you see unopened piles of mail, it's time to have a conversation. Okay, moving beyond that, when someone falls and they're not able to be home for a while, now you're collecting the mail, maybe you step in as power of attorney. I did this for my dad like a year before he ended up being hospitalized for 9 months. And I stepped in as power of attorney and I handled his bills for a while. And then he came back from wherever he was and he took back over his own bills. Usually I find when you are going to be the executor of an estate, there is this like test run where you have like, oh, something happened. I'm going to step in. I'm going to be the power of attorney, but I'm still the daughter. Da, da, da. And then you hand it back and everything's fine for a period of time. And then all of a sudden the next fall comes or the next hospitalization or the next incident happens. You take back over power of attorney. Well, let me just tell you, you are now the power of attorney. You may hand some of this back over to your parents, but you probably are not going to. It's really, really awkward for you as the kid because you're like, the mom or dad are still here. And now I'm like the mom or the dad. It's so weird. So the thing I would say to that is start a Sunday basket. So we have a Sunday basket for our house. You need a Sunday basket for their house because you are now running their household, even if you're not living there. You're going to be doing the repairs. You're going to be like, I just ordered a Tavala oven for my mother-in-law and the meals that are going to come so that she can have great meals. So in that way, I'm running her groceries for her, and so you need a way to do those tasks and yet have them separate from doing them in your own house so that you remember to do them in your own house too. And it's just kind of gradually, you slowly start to run that whole household. And that's what the financial paperwork is going to start with.
Okay. So you mentioned a Sunday basket. What is that? Tell us what's Sunday basket.
Okay, so everyone should or does have some kind of a system in which they pay their bills, keep track of all the projects that are going on in their household, write themselves notes or to-do lists, and plans their work for the week. This is just a kindergarten simple system that I put together that a lot of people use. It's actually a physical box, sits on your kitchen counter, and it has slash pockets in it, which are binder inserts that are colored. And each color means something. So pink is for you personally, blue is for the people that live in that household, purple is for the actual house that you're in, and green is for all the financial. And then there's a rainbow set that you do every single week. So things you have to do on the calendar, things you have to pay bills for, things that need to go into binders, that kind of thing. This is like your homework for the week as a household manager. And so I find it's really helpful if you're running more than one household, you have more than one Sunday basket. So currently I have a Sunday basket for my husband and I in our household. I also have a Sunday basket for my daughter and my grandkids who live in our house with us. And we're adding a Sunday basket for my mother-in-law that my husband is the power of attorney for. So in that way, when I'm sorting mail, I could sort it into multiple Sunday baskets. When I have an idea, I could drop the idea into multiple Sunday baskets. We have Tavala meals at our house. My mother-in-law is going to have Tavala meals at her house. So there are Tavala slash pockets in both her Sunday basket and our Sunday basket. So if she has any questions for us, we have a copy at our house, even though she has a copy at her house. So we can answer questions. This is big for a caregiver and power of attorney. Duplicate everything. Have a Sunday basket at their house so they can get their own information, but have one at your house. So when they call you, you could look in your basket and say, yeah, the delivery is going to come on Tuesday. And yes, you are getting the soup that you want.
Brilliant, especially with people that might be struggling with a little bit of memory or early dementia.
Yeah.
I mean, that is brilliant, just brilliant. Wow, huge, huge. So I've covered a lot of information. I'm going to invite you again to and just pause for a moment. Just like, how are you doing? Are you okay? How are you feeling? Doing okay?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I thought you were asking the people who are listening. I
No,
keep
you,
going.
everybody.
I'm doing okay, but I do like how often you tell us to breathe because I don't think I breathe enough.
I can tell. I mean, honestly, I can tell. I can tell. I'm not going to dog you on that, but you could definitely take some time. Just, I feel like you're definitely up here breather. There's not much going on. We can talk about that. Anyway, so tell me a little bit of something about what are you personally working on, working through, and what are you doing to kind of solve it and care for yourself?
So I think I'm 54. I like to say how old I am because it's really helpful for women to know how old you are because we go through a lot of things that are seasonal. So I'm out of the active caregiving of young children. My kids are 24 and 25 years old, so or 20, 24 and 26. So they are firmly into their adulthood now, starting to create their own adult lives. But I do have these grandchildren living with me. We do have our mother-in-law living in the same city with us. There are a lot of caregiving responsibilities going on. And as I'm in my 50s, I'm really enjoying growing the company that I started in my 40s. And that takes a lot of precedence and weight because it is, part of how we earn our income. And it is part of what makes me uniquely me. So I am giving weight to that. But I am working on my self-care more than I ever have. So I do Pilates a couple of times a week. I'm looking at adding in golf maybe this year or things like that. Things that are just fun, that are not caregiving or income producing, but are just like fun.
Yeah, yeah, that's so important. I was thinking
Yeah.
yesterday, this age range, right? I'm 62, heading into 63, and I feel like at this time of life for me, I, I am building and growing, continue to build and grow kind of business, podcasts, all the rest of it. And at the same time, I do feel like I have more kind of free time, like kind of, and that has been lovely, right? I've been able to kind of pare down my schedule a bit. I'm very intentional about time and energy and what I book, what I book and what I don't book. And it's,
Yeah.
I know I'm really privileged. It is a luxury, but I think even like in a day to day, is there 10 minutes or 20 minutes you can unplug and you can just clean for yourself, right? Because again, like you said, so much going on. So I love that. You got some goals, so you're taking some time to unplug and I can see that you really enjoy it, right? You have a lot of joy. You really enjoy. I'm sure there are frustrations, but in general, you seem like you're really enjoying kind of where you are.
I am. And yes, there are always frustrations. And in my 30s, I was always like, oh, somebody take these frustrations away from me. And in my 40s, I kind of like worked through and I was like, is this really a frustration? Isn't it frustration? Can I just get rid of the thing altogether? And now when things come up that are unexpected or hard, I think, but how lucky am I to have the, resources that I have available to help in this situation, whether it's financial or just my physical health or my intellectual curiosity. And I look at things much more as like opportunities to help and serve versus like, woe was me, this is so hard and I shouldn't have to, and it should be somebody else's turn. Cause it's just part of life, right? Not everything
It
is.
is.
And the way you approach it can really make a terrible time an opportunity. And there can always be good in everything if you look hard enough.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in lessons, right? Even our challenges provide lessons and
Yeah.
growth and just opportunities, even the darkest times. Like once we can get through them and get to the other side, there's I'm gonna say always, but there's often a huge opportunity for growth and learning, just kind of wisdom. I think you are spot on.
Yeah.
So I do like to ask this question. If you were to give listeners some kind of sage advice about, just kind of living intentionally, it doesn't even have to be organizational, but I'm sure it is. What would that be? What would you share with people?
Yeah, it's not organizational. So the thing that I really learned in my 40s that I will keep with me for the rest of my life and has really been so powerful is to replace the idea of perfection with excellence. So I've never been
Mm.
able to be perfect. I was never a straight A student. And so I always thought I was less than like, oh, well, perfection isn't a thing. So I just can't reach that. I guess I'll just settle on being subpar, right? And in my 40s, I realized, no, that's not true because I bring excellent energy and effort and my resources to everything that I do. But perfection isn't a thing. Like nobody's perfect, even if it looks like somebody else is. They really aren't perfect. And once I made that swap of excellence for perfection, I realized that I swapped something else. Even though I wasn't hitting the mark of being perfect, I was judging myself for not hitting it, even though it's not even attainable. And once I replaced it with excellence, I was giving myself grace. Like, hey, that's not even a thing. So we don't have to judge ourselves against this imaginary perfectionistic standard that you're never going to hit anyway. And once I stopped judging myself and gave myself grace, I started giving my family grace instead of judgment. I stopped judging other people too. And I stopped taking their judgment of me as judgment in any situation. When somebody says something or they're judging me, I don't have to take it. Like, I don't have to accept it. And I'm not rude, like, don't judge me. I just in my soul, like, it used to wound me and now it doesn't. And so that is the
Mm,
big thing that shifted for me in my 40s that I want women to hear is that perfection doesn't exist. You're not a perfectionist, but then replace that with you are a woman of excellence. And that is just so empowering. It's something we can
I like
really
that.
strive for and attain.
Yeah, you can know when you said that, right? You're a woman of excellence. You can almost kind of feel it in the body, right? And kind of shoulders go back a bit,
Yeah.
spine straightens. It's like kind of you can really wrap yourself mentally, physically, emotionally around that. That's beautiful. I love that. Love
Yeah.
that. So powerful. Thank you for sharing. Now I know you have a new book and I want to hear about that. And I also want to know, what would you love to share with listeners today?
Yeah. So if you've liked this conversation, I have a podcast also called Organize 365. I've been podcasting for 11 and a half years. So there's plenty of content over there. And my sixth book is coming out on June 23rd, but you can get a pre release copy right now called Escaping Quicksand. If you get your pre release copy, if you pre order the book, I should say, then you can get in our book club. And I'm dropping one chapter of the book per week in the book club as an audio. And we're working through the book together. Becoming a person of excellence and not a perfectionist is one of the chapters in the book.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And any links or websites you want to shout out?
Yeah, you could just go to organize365.com. You can find the podcast and the book there.
Okay, thanks, Hassan. And I will put links to all of Lisa's good stuff in the show notes, of course. So, Lisa, thank you so much for today. It's been just such a pleasure to connect and so fun. I have learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners are just leaning in and listening, and will be visiting you for all kinds of tips and strategies.
Thank you so much, Kate.
You're welcome. Take care.
One final thing. As I step away from social media and move toward a more intentional way of creating and sharing, my website has become the best place to stay connected. At livingbigmindfully.com, you can sign up for my Reflections and Intentions newsletter, download the free Aging Better toolkit, and explore the Living Big Mindfully magazine. This is all part of my mission to support and inspire you to live longer, stronger, and more intentionally. And remember, you and what you're doing does matter. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me today on the Living Big Mindfully podcast. Until next time, take care. Hey, me again. Just a reminder, this podcast should not be considered professional advice. It's also not a substitute for mental, physical, or any other healthcare-related treatment. For any questions about your condition and/or concerns, please contact a fully licensed healthcare professional. Thank you.